Thank you all for joining today. This is more of a Podio 101 webinar. So kind of walking through a lot of the basics, just get you familiar with the interface, how certain things are structured. And as always, I always like to start with a welcome to Podio. So Podio as a whole, when it comes down to our infrastructure, is really broken into these two different silos that we refer to as workspaces and apps. So your workspaces are always located in this drop down on the left-hand side. This is really how you're choosing to organize or bucket your information together. So you may have everything in one workspace. You may have different workspaces for different departments. A lot of that does come down to personal preference. It kind of depends on the way you like to work, but those will always be located in that drop down here. Within each workspace, you have something that we call apps, and that's where all of the actual work from Podio is really going to be living. Those will be located across the top here. We're going to create one later on the call, but now, in essence, your apps are really just your templates. So if you're managing clients, deals, projects, anything along those sorts, you want different fields within those templates to make sure that what you're organizing makes sense. So that's why having different apps for those items can be really helpful. What we're looking at on this page is a workspace landing page or a workspace dashboard. So all of your workspaces visually will start looking quite similar. On the left-hand side, you'll always see the name of your workspace. You'll see your users. You have the share something, which is just nice for status updates, kind of get away from that reply all email, where you can attach files, links, or even pose questions. So something like a poll. And then below that, you have a running activity feed. And that's also everything that's when that's happened and who had made that change. So just a good bird's eye view of all of your different moving. On the right-hand side, you kind of see these sort of preset boxes. We refer to these as tiles. So these are great for things that you want to be able to access quickly and regularly within your workspace. So shortcuts to reporting is quite popular, helpful links, text instructions, images if you want to have a little bit more of a branded feel, calendar, tasks, it's totally up to you. The nice thing with this, especially if you're saving reports in here, is as the information that's being reported on is updated in Podio, those report tiles will update as well. So no need to feel like you have to constantly refresh. Okay. Up here on the right, you have a built-in chat feature. So very similar to something like an online chat system. Don't want to necessarily name anybody here, but you can do individual or group messaging. Those conversations do archive throughout the life of the account, and you do have the ability to access this mobilely. So since Podio does have a mobile app, those chats can come right through to your phone with push notifications as well. And cool. So what I'm going to do now is kind of move into that sort of app structure. When we want to add something into a workspace, you'll always see this Add App button. It'll be at the end of the list of apps. So if you have several, look towards the bottom there. But we'll go ahead and go Add App here. And you always get your two different options. We'll look at both today. The first one is to create your own. So much simpler to do than you may think. It's basic drag and drop. So we give you a list of field options. You're able to drag those in place, name those what you'd like, and hit save. Anytime you hit add new, you get a blank version of that template. So we'll play around with that later on this webinar. But I do want to highlight this app market here. A lot of times people may shy away from this because they see a market and assume it's additional cost. This is actually included with the Podio licensing. It's just preset apps that either we've created or we've approved that can be uploaded into your own workspaces. If I pop into this app market, I'm able to see both individual apps or app packs. So those are just individual apps that may be together, whether it be via a relationship or just things that we thought would be helpful to one another. With these, we have them organized by both function and industry. So really something for everybody here. You can even search for key terms. You can always go in to get more info. So if you wanted to get an idea of what's coming with an app, you get a nice little breakdown, some screenshots and what apps are included. And the nice thing with this as well is if, let's say you're downloading an app, maybe it's using slightly different terms than you are using, or maybe you want to add or remove fields, you still have the ability to modify any of those, even if it is coming from this app market once it's into your space. Similarly, a question we get a lot is, well, what if I, bring in an app from the app market, but then I don't need it anymore? You can go ahead and delete that at any time. Just know that once deleted, any data that's saved within that app would no longer be retrievable unless you've done your own private backup. So I'm going to hop back into my workspace here. And I had mentioned we're going to go ahead and create our own. So when you're creating your own, the first thing you're going to get is where you can basically name it and what you want the item to be. So the app name is whatever you want displayed. So let's say projects or clients, and the item name is the individual instance of that app. So in this case, I'm calling it an item. It could be project, it could be person, it could be whatever, but just to clarify that. It's always going to default you to the standard type of app. Honestly, I use this 90% of the time, but if you did need to change it to an event app, which is really helpful for anything calendar based or a contact app, you're able to do so. You're also able to change your app icon. So maybe I want this to be something a little bit more visually pleasing here. For your layouts, it's going to standard layouts always going to default to badge, but you are able to change it. I'll go through what each of these views look like. However, the table view tends to be the one I recommend, especially that new table view, which has some additional features. If you're coming from something like Excel, that is most visually the same, so it's just easier to adjust to. But badge is quite good for anything where you want a bigger view, and card is going to be more similar to that Kanban view of being able to kind of drag things across statuses.
Hey, Mac,
Activity, yes,
just quick, your microphone is fading sometimes. Just
I can try and adjust that. Give me one moment here. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you.
yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
So again, the activity feed view is going to be very similar to that activity feed on the workspace level. Basically just going to show you all the changes that have occurred within that app. And then your calendar view, fairly self-explanatory. We select what date you want to be able to display, and it pulls up as if it's its own calendar. If you need to do a bit more with those app setups, so whether it's description or instructions, you also have this advanced tab where if you don't want certain things to post to any news stream, whether it be the activity one or the workspace dashboard, if you don't want certain notifications, and then the one I see quite often is the ability to show unique IDs. So this is, you're pulling information from another system or a way of organization into Podio, and maybe you have like job numbers or client numbers that you want to start new from. You can go ahead and set that with that unique ID here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to go to general and we'll go ahead and create. So when I'm creating my own app, it's going to give me this sort of whiteboard, if you will. Seeing the question and answers. The mobile view is slightly different. You can still choose between whether it's a table or a badge. It is just more limiting with how much is going on the screen on desktop. I believe we have some screenshots of that on the docs page that is now located on docs.sharefile.com. I'll see if I can grab that and send that over. But as we're setting up the template here, the first field is always going to default to a text field. Maybe I don't want this to be named title. Maybe I want it to be, client name. So there I can just type in that and change what I want that field to display as. So if we're thinking, let's manage our clients here, some of the other information we may want to be capturing, things like phone number. So I can grab that and just drag it in place. Email. Maybe I want their address. So this location field actually is an integration with Google Maps. So I can plug in that address and get that nice clean street view, which we'll be able to pull through. And then obviously we have other fields here that we can touch on. So the date field, if I'm dragging that in, maybe I want this to be, like a start date. Whenever you're needing to have any sort of tweak to a field, you'll always see that little caret here. So by selecting that caret, you can make any field within your template required, hide it if empty, or have it always empty. You can show that in calendars, and you can hide the time entry or the end date. So I will keep the time entry and the end date available on one, and I'm going to hide it on the other just so you can see the visual difference. I tend to hide them quite often when I'm setting up my own templates, but this is, again, just wanting you to see all of your options here. Category fields are immensely helpful, especially for things like reporting, or if you are looking at our more advanced levels of Podio with things like automation. Categories are allowing you to basically select different options. So maybe if I'm talking about managing a client, I might say what type of client they are. And here I can just say A, B, C, D, E, whatever you want those to be, we can plug in. If you are a bit more of a visual worker, I know I am myself, we can also go ahead and color code these just so they have a little bit more pop to them, a little bit easier to navigate or move through. Lovely. I might also have a category in here for something like a status. So whether it's, first contact, returning, existing, and former. Member field is for whenever you need to assign it to somebody who's a member of that workspace. So any of your internal employees or any of your users that you have in that employee grouping. Again, you can hit that little arrow, kind of see what's going to be able to view here. So always sharing this item with non-space workspace members and or email addresses added to this field. So that says if they're not in here, it's going to add that to it. Again, I can change that to internal contacts. Number field's fairly self-explanatory. That's just if you have any sort of numerical value, you just want to be able to plug in. Link would be if you needed to hyperlink to anything. So if I wanted to include maybe someone's LinkedIn page or their business page. Image is an image field. If you ever need to include any sort of imagery, pictures, what have you. Money is great. Let's say maybe I have like a net worth field in here, or if we're looking at even like deal tracking, you might have the potential deal value. If we're looking at projects, it might be budget related. So just a way to kind of think of those fields. Progress is great. So if you want a visual progress bar, on basic Podio, you'd have to be manually moving that. On our more advanced version, so that'll be the plus and the premium, you can actually have it say, if I've gone from status 1 to status 2, I want that progress bar to move 20%. So it's something that you can get that sort of automatic update depending on your different pacing. Calculations are the basic math. So if I wanted to say, the square footage in one field times the cost per square foot in another and have that calculation give me that total, you can mention the fields above. This is also if you have anybody on hand or a partner that you're working with that wants to do some custom coding, that would be done in those calculation fields. While custom coding with those calculations is really interesting and can do quite a bit, I just always like to make note that that's one part that our support team would not be able to help with, since it is custom code that either you or someone that you've employed has been building into your account. It's not necessarily something that we'd have visibility into. So just kind of know that that would be something, if you're looking to do more of that coding or calculations, we'd want to make sure that we got you linked up with one of our certified partners. And then last but not least, we have duration. So tracking any sort of, how many hours are being allotted for a specific task or communication. And the relationship field, I always like to highlight. This is really, really powerful when we start getting into multiple apps. So this relationship field is actually going to allow you to link items, whether it's in different apps or different workspaces, to each other. So let's say I have my clients app here. I might have a projects app and a project workspace, but that project is for said client. I can use that relationship field to be able to link those two items together. That way, when I pull up that client record, I'm always able to see any of the project items that have been attached to them via that relationship field. And vice versa, if I'm on that project, I can quickly see the contact information for that client. So we'll go ahead and hit done here to get that saved. Great. And now when I'm in the app view here, clearly we don't have anything saved yet, but just to give you a quick sort of overview when you're in an app before you have any data. On the left-hand side, you'll always see the name of said app. You have the share app option. So this is actually a newer feature. We rolled this out earlier in the year. Heavily requested, so we're excited to be able to get that across the finish line. But this allows you to share just a specific app with an individual as opposed to having them be a member of the entire workspace. If they are a member of the workspace, they do have access to everything saved within that workspace. So if you do have anything that's a bit more private, you want to have that saved in a space maybe you've given less people access to. But if you did need to share just one singular app, you now have the ability to do so right here. Unfollow or follow this app basically just says when you're getting your notifications, which are always located in the little bell. The wrench is super helpful. When in doubt, look for the wrench. That's what I say every time. But if I ever needed to make modifications to this template, change any of my settings or layout options, if I'm on that premium tier and want to play more with workflow automation, if I'm on that plus tier and want to see the more limited side of workflows, those are both located here. Import and export with Excel. So for the import, it asks for a field map. So you can say which fields of your spreadsheet you want to pull into which fields in your Podio app. You do that mapping once, and then you can import that item in. Similarly, export will just pull that all out. If you ever needed to clone the app, so let's say I wanted this exact app, the exact same template in a different workspace, I can do so here. I can do that either with the data or without the data. So if this had quite a few items in it, I'd be able to say I want all of that to move over, or I can just say I want the template itself. If you ever needed to delete the app, as I mentioned some earlier with the pulling from the app market, you can do so here. It does make you type in delete this app. And again, that is because once it is deleted, it is unrecoverable on our side. So we do make it difficult to delete anything accidentally. You just want to be mindful of that, of knowing that once that's gone, that data cannot be pulled back unless you've done your own internal backup. Again, sharing the app, which we touched on up here, or archiving something that you don't need to see. Cleaning up deleted values. So if you've modified a field and you just want that field completely gone, even if something is saved there in a previous item, we can go ahead and clean that up. Anything integrations, so things like webhooks, again, getting a little bit more into the advanced side, but that's where that would be located. And then the one that's super popular is going to be web forms, which I will touch on once I kind of build that sample item so you can see how to get that set up. For views, this is if you have sort of shortcut views that you want to be able to save. Again, this is sort of almost like a clients app. Maybe I want to see a view of all of my clients in what type of client breakdown they may be or what status they are. I can go ahead and build that view, either team or private. I'll make this a team view. I can say by client type. And then that split by is where I'm kind of choosing where I want those bucketed. So in this case, I could say by client type, go ahead and save. Obviously, we don't have any items here saved yet, so you'd be able to pull that through. But that can be then just that viewable field for either just yourself or the entire team. So what we'll do here is go ahead and create an item. So again, we created that template. I now just get that blank version of that template. So I'm going to just throw in some fields here. Again, I could make any of these required. Skip through. For the address field, I'm just going to type in our old office address. So you can see that nice clean map view. I can click into that and it would bring me automatically to Google Maps with that address already plugged in so that I can get driving directions or just send it right to my phone. And here are those two date fields that I wanted to visually show you the two differences of. So for the start date, I did not hide the timestamp or the end date. So you can see it's much more of a range. So this is if I want to get really particular. So now I have it going maybe till noon the next day. Sometimes you just need one static date. So for instance, if it's like a date submitted, I don't necessarily need that range. So on that end date, I hid the timestamp and the end date. So now it's just one static day. So you do have the option for either. You can also, hide the end date, but not the timestamp. You kind of have options on how you can do that. Yep. Type of client here, we can go ahead and select B. Let's say it's our first contact, and I'll go ahead and assign myself. Okay, so now we have this visually nice, sort of pleasing way to be able to organize anything that we're putting within the system. On the right-hand side, any change that you're making to this item will be highlighted on the right-hand side. So if I move that status, it shows that that status has been changed to returning with the ability to revert back. It shows that Mac Flintosh made that change on April 24th at 4:22 p.m. So my computer on this particular account thinks that I am in Copenhagen, so I will get that changed, but that'll be the timestamp for whatever time you have set in your account settings. This is also great for communication. So with your comments here, I can go ahead and throw that in. Anyone else who's in this workspace can basically have, or being shared this app with, can have that back and forth with me directly on the item itself. So no more digging through inboxes or email threads to try and find any sort of questions or answers. You're able to have all of that communication on the item itself. And similar to that workspace dashboard, you can attach files, you can share links or pose those questions, which is great for any type of polling. Okay, so I'll hop back into that app view. So here what we're looking at right now is that badge view. You can determine which fields from the app are displaying on the badge, and that would be in that layout options area, specifically in that badge layout. I had mentioned those relationship fields. If you wanted to change what's displaying there, that'd be known as the reference layout. So solely so you have some familiarity there. Going through that table view, again, much more similar to an Excel spreadsheet, just a little bit more easy to adapt to if you are coming from that environment. However, if you are, I do highly recommend checking out the new table view. So this allows you to be able to kind of pick and choose which fields are being displayed, and then you can save that as a specific view. If you're opening an item in this, you want to just make sure that you're expanding right there. I know there were some questions around that when we first got that laid out, so just kind of bringing that to light. Card view, so this is, let's say I wanted to move them there. I can kind of transition them around specifically on this view. If you're coming from anything similar to like a whiteboard, this can be really helpful. Again, just giving that familiarity. Activity view, again, this is not as popular as a view if I'm just being completely transparent, but this will just kind of give you the high overview of anything that's occurred within the app. And then last but not least, that calendar view, where if I did have those dates selected, they would be displaying here in this calendar. or I can choose to view it by month, week, or day. Okay, so I'll get that back in that table view and we can go into web forms. So what our web forms do is it's taking that app that we've created and making it a blank template that can be submitted directly into your Podio account without an individual having to be a part of your Podio account. So great for ticketing, for proposal requests, project requests, new client intake, anything along those lines. If you just want someone to be able to submit things in, this is a great route to go. For these I almost called them webinars. For these web forms, we always give you the embedded code. So if you want to have that embedded in your website, you can copy and paste, or a shareable link, which I tend to hyperlink out and put in an email signature, or you can have it on any sort of site that you may be marketing on. And then under configuration, that's where I can pick and choose which fields from the app itself are visible on the web form. So for instance, I want this to be a new client form, but maybe I don't want them to tell me what type of client they are. That's something I'm going to designate. I definitely don't want them to pick their status because they may just pick the highest status they want anytime. And maybe I don't want them to be putting in their net worth. Maybe that's something I'd rather get over a phone call. So by me unchecking those fields, you can see it's removing it from the web form itself, but it doesn't remove it from the app. So once this web form is submitted, a new item would push into that app in Podio, and those fields would return as opposed to just being gone, where now I have to kind of figure out where I'm keeping track of things in the notes. So that can be quite helpful. Title and description is if you wanted to give a title to any web form you may have, instructions on how to submit. And by me typing that in here, we can see that that pulls through. For themes, you can add your own custom CSS. So if you do want to get something that's really, really tailored to you, that is possible. We do have some set themes as well. So if I wanted to just kind of change that up a bit, I'm a big fan of the superhero. So that's a fun one to pull through. But again, totally up to you. Spam protection is that standard CAPTCHA. So full disclosure, it is here's 9 pictures, select which one that has a bike in it, where sometimes the pictures are super clear and sometimes it makes you want to throw your laptop across the hall. So just to be mindful that that is the type of spam protection. However, with bot presence just always being something that's increasing, very helpful to have to make sure that you're not just getting spam leads or spam requests. The button text is whatever you'd like that submit button to say. So we can say, send here, contact me, please, submit, totally up to you. And after submissions, either a nice little thank you note that you can pose, or if you prefer, you can actually redirect it back to the URL. So if you have that where it's embedded within your website, it can push back to your website. So these are incredibly handy to have. Again, once these are submitted, they pull directly into Podio. So as soon as somebody hits submit, it's immediately pushing into that app, and then you can be able to work as normal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave this page here. And then one last thing I wanted to touch on is for Podio, we have technically 3 different versions. So we have more of a freemium version, which has a lot of limitations, but it's great to just get a feel for the interface and see if it's a platform you'd be comfortable working in. We have our Plus version and we have our premium version. So the Plus version is going to include the web forms, or excuse me, the workflows in this first option. So I'll touch on those briefly. The premium version, you are going to get quite a bit more capability, from automation to reporting capabilities to calculations. That's always going to be on that premium level. That's a lot of what we focus on those 201 webinars. Just to briefly touch on it for the 101 webinar, if you wanted to be on that Plus version, maybe you just needed really minimal workflow automation. So just maybe some tasks that are generating out at certain points. That would be great for that Plus. If you do need anything a bit more than that, we're probably going to recommend premium just to make sure you have the full experience that you're looking for. But for those Plus workflows, here's going to bring you into create the workflow. You have 2 options in this Plus version of what's kicking off the workflow. So it can be whenever an item is created, i.e. I'm saving a new project, a new web form is submitted, or whenever I'm updating an item. So that'd be, let's say if I'm changing the status of something, I want XYZ to occur. So this is going to give you the fields of what can be updated. So again, I'll say status, and that's going to be the sort of the trigger point of the workflow itself. The other main part of any of our automation is what we call conditional based logic. So that's going to be the and if. So that would be, and this is currently on that free version, so you can see I would need to upgrade to be able to accomplish that. But again, to just see what that would look like, I can say if the status was changed and if the status was A and is now B. So I can really kind of tailor what needs to occur at each step of my process. And then on that plus version, you get these 5 different options. So you can either create a task, so it can be your checklist style tasks, which I can highlight momentarily, add a comment, which will be on that right-hand side of that app item, create an item. So potentially, if it's a request and I say accepted, it might create an item in a projects app or in a deals app that can pull some of that information over, update this specific item that it's referencing, or update the item here. So that's going to be the sort of cap of what you can automate on that plus level. But there are some questions that we received around the difference between plus and premium. Again, the premium, you can accomplish quite a bit more with that automation. And if that's something you're interested in, I do highly recommend checking out the 201 webinars. Okay, something back in here. I know I just mentioned that task, so I do want to highlight that while we're here. Boom. So for tasks, every item has the ability for those checklist style tasks. I believe you can hide it if you need to, but this is great if you have small things that you want to be able to make sure are getting done, but maybe it's not something as big that requires like a status or a lot of back and forth. So with this, we can go ahead and add one. So let's say message out. Oh, that's for who? That's why I'm being silly. I apologize. Subject, I can say, that's because I'm doing a message. I'm being silly all over the place. There we go. Enter a task, message out, webinar follow-up. So basic messaging, I can go ahead and assign that to myself. I can set my due date, whether it's a custom date or a variable date. I can even put a time on that. Any notes, labels, or files can be attached here as well. I can have reminders set or have those be recurring. So we can go ahead and create that task here. What I'll do right now is do a quick little refresh. Great, and now I can see that checklist style task across the bottom. So with this, I can see when it's due, that sort of name of that task. I can click into that to get full details, who that's assigned to, and I can even go ahead and mark that off as being completed once I know that's done. Another feature we've released in more recent times is the ability to hide completed tasks. So this way, if I just want to see the stuff that's still pending, I don't need to see the stuff we've already done, I can go ahead and select that option. It would then remove that from my visibility, and then I could go ahead and hit show all tasks, and it can bring me back to that main view. So it allows you to kind of toggle back and forth between the two. One thing that I do recommend highly is if you do have tasks that are a bit more involved, so do need things like a status or need a specific person to have a team related on, we recommend doing a task app as opposed to doing checklist style tasks. So similar to how we just created this app, you just have one named task. You can use the relationship field to tie it back to what those tasks are pushing toward, but it does allow you to accomplish quite a bit more when it comes to the way that those are grouped together, the way that you can report on those, the way that those are being viewed as a team collaborative space. So just something to keep in mind that we would really, really highly recommend. Okay. Last but not least, I'll touch briefly on reporting, and then we can go ahead and let everyone get on with their lovely Wednesday. When you're reporting within an app, when you're in that app view, you'll always see this option here where it says reports or create report. If you go to report, that's going to bring you to basically a page with any report that you built specific for this app. So if you wanted to see lots of reports in one space, that's a great area to hit. As of right now, we haven't created any, so we want to go ahead and create one first. So go ahead and hit that option here. On that freemium version and that plus version, you have one type of reporting. We refer to that as a count report. That's more so of the, I want to see of my 20 clients, how many are in each status bucket. How many are a specific client type. So that's what we refer to when we say count. On that premium version, you do have the option for calculation reports as well. So this is great for any sort of monetary stuff you'd like to measure, any sort of time you might be tracking. This can give you total summations, summaries, averages, means, so lots of stuff you can do here. I personally tend to use count quite a bit as opposed to calculation, but you have options for both. And now for items per, that's going to kind of show you the fields that I have within this template that can be broken down and measured. So date fields, person it's assigned to, who created it, and then here you have my categories. As I had mentioned previously, categories are really helpful for things like automation and reporting. Giving an example of how. So let's say I want to broke it down by type of client. Right now we just have the one saved in here, but if that had more, we could have several more saved underneath it. Then next would be sort of the title of what I want this app report to be called. So I can say by client type. The unit, feel free to put anything in here. So I can say one client, I can say one project. I personally leave this blank quite often because I just like that cleaner style of reporting, but a lot of it is really, really helpful there to be able to kind of just keep that however you'd want it to be. And then last but not least, for the save to, you can either save to your app reports, that page that I was just mentioning, your home page. So that's gonna be your personal login page whenever you're coming into Podio, or most popular, that workspace homepage. So I'll go ahead and save that here. And now I can see that reports pulled through. As I'd mentioned previously, if I have more clients coming in, this report will update to highlight the information that's come in through that app. So no need to refresh those templates over and over again. All right, wonderful, guys. So that's going to kind of sum up the 101 version. Again, if you're looking for a little bit more, I recommend that 201 webinar, which you should see a pop out in your Podio account for coming up soon. That'll be in the beginning of May. Or if it's something you want to get into right away, it is the one from this past month, so beginning of April, is stored on that share file YouTube page. We truly recommend, or we truly appreciate everyone taking some time out of their day to come join us and kind of walk through some of the basics of Podio. And we hope to see you on future webinars, which will start getting a little bit more involved with specific features or need requests as opposed to generalized information. We wanted to just make sure that we could get everybody a little bit more of a handhold when they're coming into Podio, so they feel like this is definitely a solution that's going to take them to where they need to go. But thank you everyone very much for your time, and we will look forward to seeing you all again soon.